concept of this project began as an audio story. It would take the listener through the perspective of the main character, but it seemed to be a lot more involved for just one person to do. So I then contacted Nathan, and it sort of snowballed into an idea of making it, instead of just an audio project, be more so a film. And then as that progressed, we figured that we would probably need one more person to sort of round this whole thing out. And so we enlisted Zach, and that's how the whole thing started.
This whole project started when Spencer came to me and Nathan and said he wanted to do a project with binaural audio. He explained it was a certain process of how you would record the audio, and then when you'd put on the headphones, it would sound like you were hearing the environment as if you were actually there. And I thought that sounded pretty cool.
Spencer brought this idea using the binaural audio, so I thought, what can I bring to the table so it's even more immersive, plus something that's never been seen before, really. Well, I've been looking around, and I thought, hey, if we do the whole film first person, then we can use the Oculus Rift to tell this story. Then we can put the viewer behind the eyes of a character in the film.
We then had to figure out how would we work all these elements together. And one of the early problems we ran into is if you show a movie through the Oculus Rift, we wouldn't be able to cut to any traditional camera because it would confuse the viewer. So we then quickly decided thereafter that we would film the entire thing in first-person point of view. And we all got pretty excited about that pretty fast. So the viewer isn't just along for the ride, they are in the driver's seat. You are the movie. This is all happening to you.
Our next challenge was telling a story that lends itself to the technology in this way. What kind of elements or characters could we add to this story to make it more realistic and easier to tell through this medium? So we went with more of a sci-fi robotic theme. We could also show off a fantastical element, basically like your Iron Man in Iron Man's suit.
We figured out how to write the story. We ran into another problem that we knew we'd face in production, and that was, how do we edit? Since we're using point of view, we can't cut to another angle. So we had to write a script which lent itself to this idea of kind of an abduction story rather quickly, because in stories like that, the lead is always losing track of time.
We talked about how we would film this, what technologies would we need to incorporate. I brought up the idea of shooting in stereoscopic 3D. In the Oculus Rift, when you have 3D, basically you're viewing your left channel on the left eye and the right channel on the right eye, so it gives you the same sort of immersion and depth that it does in a film. We looked around and we thought, if we shoot with small cameras, we can just bolt them to our heads. And using two of them side by side, we can shoot 3D and also get that immersion and depth.
The way that binaural audio recordings work is that inside the microphones, they have a little algorithm so that they make the whole experience of recording much more real. In a way, I sort of describe it as sort of 3D audio. The way that you record binaural audio recordings is that it's not just on an x-axis, but you can also record on a y-axis and a z-axis. This gives the audio a much more depth of field, making it much more an immersive experience.
We had built this helmet that would hold our cameras as well as hold our recording device and microphones. That part was easy, but then we had to cross the bridge of cinematography. Wherever I looked would be exactly where the viewer would look. We have a scene that we shot in a basement, and it starts off where there's this bag over my head, and it gets pulled off. So I can't just be a flat camera just not reacting. I'm supposed to be this person, so I try pushing in with my head and pulling back, and I try investigating the room by moving my head around. I try to make eye contact with each individual person in the scene. sounds like a lot of hard work. It is. We rehearsed it before, but once you get in there, you feel more like a character instead of just a camera. So you're thinking, oh, this part's happening. I should be struggling now. It seems to flow fairly well.
The problems that arose from this project from an audio perspective is sort of doing the sound effects and music. In a regular film, you would just record on site, but with this project, recording sound effects or music is a much more complicated issue. You would have to record not just with yourself, but you would have to use either your own head or get a dummy head such as this. This is because the recording microphones that were used were plugged into your ears, sort of like earbuds. You would have to record everything, play it back, and not just that, but you also have to pay attention to where and location you recorded those sound effects or the music. It was much more of a surreal experience as opposed to doing a regular student film. All we did was basically press record, hid behind a ledge or behind a wall, and we sort of just let things run.
But when you're going back and forth and collaborating like this, it's been a real challenge, but a real blessing to learn to work this way.
We were dealing with some new technology, but I think overall it was a very worthwhile experience, and I would do it all over again if I had to.